What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more Duran Duran, and this is sort of a special reaction. It's a number of you have mentioned that doing The Edge of America and Lakeshore Driving as a two for one would be a great idea, and so I'm going to combine those two and do the flute interlude before it. So yeah, we're going to do basically three tracks, even though one of them is a very short interlude. It's only 30 seconds long, or I think 32 seconds. But yeah, so I'm very excited as we come to the end of this album. The second half of it, I mentioned in a previous reaction, I think it was the one for Land. It really has stood out to me. Not only was Do You Believe in Shame just a brilliant tune, but Palomino, it's quickly become one of my very favorites from Duran Duran. And then Land was also another remarkable tune. So not only have I enjoyed this album, but in particular the second half of it has really stood out to me. So yeah, it's a testament to the fact that a number of you, before I got it, you were like, oh, you got to get Big Thing, and so I'm waiting for you to get that album. I do understand that. And someone mentioned, before Medazzoland, this might have been their most experimental. I am picking up on that a little bit, but I will say, though, I've been thinking about that. I feel like there are songs on a number of different albums they've done where they, will go down a path that is a bit more like non-standard. It's not like a typical like cookie cutter like catchy song. So even though there are albums that I now understand to be more sort of experimental overall, it does seem that they've tried to do, even when they've gone to genres that are like kind of more mainstream popular genres, they've tried to kind of do it in their own way and put their own stamp on it. So I really do enjoy that. But yeah, so we're going to listen to the flute interlude. Again, it's sort of like is what it says, right? I imagine we're going to hear a woodwind, a flute of some kind, but it'll be an interlude leading into The Edge of America. I mentioned it before, I'm fascinated by that title. Obviously, it refers to proximity, it refers to, the geographical location of America, which usually when it's used in a sort of modern like political and social context, you're talking about the United States, but the Americas, it's two continents as well as Central America, which is technically not its own continent, but yeah, there's a lot of cultural, political, and social diversity across the Americas and even within America, the United States. But to say the edge of America is to, again, perhaps be right on the border between America and not America. So whether you're talking culture or, social forms or a political approach, or you're talking in terms of the music world, it could relate to any of those in which America is seen as having a distinct characteristic or set of attributes. Now, I'm inclined to think that the song Rio, as I've come to understand it, and even to a certain extent, if you go back and look at that reaction, which is very early on, I did have sort of a memory from hearing it when I was younger. Certainly as a kid, but then I think as I got older, I started thinking more about song lyrics. So I think by the time the '90s rolled around, I started to see Rio as a song about them just kind of like paying tribute to the U.S. and the parts of the U.S. they would go to, and I now kind of understand it to be about they wanted to conquer the U.S. musically. They wanted to put their stamp on the U.S. in terms of making an impact, which they obviously did. But yeah, so when I hear Edge of America, the phrase, it makes me wonder whether it could relate to their perception of their impact there, or their penetration of the American musical market, if you will. But I suspect it may not be about that, or at least not solely about that. But ultimately, there's a number of different ways you could go with it, and like I said, I think it speaks to proximity, the nearness as it relates to some entity, but not centrality or like complete immersion. You're talking about being on the edges of something. You are like on the border between it and something else, which again, as someone as a historian, I literally have read and even written within a sort of subgenre of American indigenous history that's called borderlands history, and it relates to the way in which certain spaces geographically, because they're on the edges of one empire and another empire, different cultural groups and so on, they tend to not be fully under the control of either of those empires or any specific cultural group. They tend to be more contested. There's more space for sort of if not necessarily unlawful behavior, certainly more like individually oriented forms of community and commerce and so on, like trade and bartering rather than, the use of one country's like currency. So again, I've studied what is called borderlands history, and as it relates to the particular types of like political and cultural and social interactions that occur in such places. So when I hear Edge of America, it does make me think about those sort of spaces where, like, the influence, the gravity of these different cultural and social forces is almost at like an impasse, and there's sort of these spaces where you can maybe create forms that are unlike things that are more standardized in particular cultural or particular political idioms of one kind or another. So yeah, it does make me think of a borderlands type of space. And then the final tune, Lakeshore Driving, it feels like a more specific phrase. It feels, again, like a proper name, like Lakeshore, and then, driving in that sort of context. So, without that phrase really making me think of anything in particular, I'm sure, that I have no doubt it relates to something specific, but in the moment I can't really think of what that is, so it's harder to get a read on what might be the themes at play, although once again, none of this is definitive or authoritative, so nothing I said about Edge of America might be relevant at all. But yeah, Lakeshore Driving, it's a bit more opaque to me, a bit more cryptic in terms of what the lyrical themes might be, so we'll have to see. But yeah, before you all fall asleep from me talking too much, though, I do want to give a compliment once again to those of you who have assured me in one way or another that you do appreciate the sort of discussions and introductions I do. Ron is one example. He said many times, like, don't be overly self-conscious about that, because sometimes I get to the point where it's like, oh crap, I've been talking for 5 minutes, I need to be quiet now. So I do appreciate those of you who have tried to reassure me, like, just do what you do and don't worry about it too much. So yeah, let's get to it. This is Flute Interlude, The Edge of America, and then Lakeshore Driving, the final 3 tracks on Duran Duran's Big Thing album, 1988. That attention. Like, it's elegant, but it's not fully relaxed or calm. Oof. Oof.
Walk the
That was insane.
edge of America. Concrete beach to scrape my head.
Concrete.
Inside the subway, stinking fear and shame.
Oof.
Becomes the violent breath. The vigilantes out on dog patrol. But now there's nothing left to hide. I'm just a number on the metal fence, which marks the great divide.
Okay.
Hey boy, do your dreams a rest. If you're tired of searching, this is where it ends. There's nothing left to lose,
Oh my god.
nothing to protest. Learn to love your anger now. Anger here is all you possess.
Nothing more to protest. Learn to love your anger, because your anger is all you have left. Oh.
Below the towers of the citadel, seems someone overlooked the cost. Forgotten soldier of paradise, now paradise is lost. Recognition never realized, salvation lost among the crowd. So tell me, beside the sterile city,
was like, is this? It's like a comprehensive critique, the thin veneer of what it's supposed to be versus the deeper and more complicated reality. Moment, I get why some people have said this is a very experimental record, you know, perhaps more so than any, at least up till Bedazzle. The edginess of the sort of sonic palette in that last section is like a demanding, like a challenging sound. It's like bright and powerful, but it's kind of angular and like it's not fully like warm and comfortable, which what I've picked up on from the lyrics, if I'm reading it right, I feel like it fits very well. It's like, yeah, like look at it from high above and maybe it looks like what people say it is, but you get down to it, the realities are harsher, the edges are sharper. Great tune sonically, though. So wait, I'm so confused. Which, Oh, I see. So then this...
Walk the edge of America.
I see. So I apologize. Obviously, like, you know, see, that's the danger, right? Like, it felt so seamless that I like almost thought we still hadn't got to the last tune yet. But again, I suppose that does speak up or speak to the very reason to do them that way, because they really do come across as part of each other. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure where to take Lakeshore Driving, because as I was hearing it, I was sort of interpreting it as part of, like I said, Edge of America. So yeah, it's interesting. I'll have to, like, you know, listen to them again, knowing exactly sort of where the barrier is. But yeah, like I don't mind experiencing it that way. I just, you know, I feel bad that there were a couple minutes there where I was still, you know, hung up on the sort of lyrical label of the previous track. But yeah, ultimately, let me know what you think about those tunes. And again, shout out to those of you who were like, hey, you should definitely do them this way, because as I said, they were like so streamlined together, I didn't actually even realize that we had transitioned into the second tune. But yeah, that was fantastic. I really did enjoy the experience of doing them that way. As I said, I feel like at least with Edge of America, lyrically, I may be on to one or two of the, sort of themes or sort of concepts at play. But do let me know if I'm sort of, misinterpreting that, or if there's another angle at least that will like further enhance my understanding. And then yeah, maybe more help was needed with Lakeshore Driving, just because not only was I less able to speculate about the meaning given the title, but in the moment I was still thinking that that was part of Edge of America. So yeah, again, apologies about that. When you go through something new, I suppose that is always a danger. Is that like, the perception, might be different from what's actually happening because you just don't have the, experience with it. So anyway, like I said, I will give a like proper immersive listen to those two tracks. The Flute Interlude was cool, but like I said, it's so short that it's almost just like its own sort of abstract little thing. But yeah, I'll go back to those two tunes, listen to them properly, and hopefully, the themes of Lakeshore Driving will begin to emerge, and perhaps, I might be able to confirm at least some aspects of what I'm thinking about the Edge of America. But yeah, let me know what you think, either lyrically or sonically, or in relation to anything else. Once again, shout out to all the Duranis out there. As I keep mentioning, a number of different like groups of people have started following my channel, and some of you have sort of shown up in different places and different playlists. But in terms of just the overall positive vibes and the enthusiasm, I don't think there's anyone else on my channel like the Duran fans. So big ups to all you. I really do appreciate it. I will see you next time. Peace.